Alaykum salam wa barakatuh. Go ahead, sir. We're ready.
We started, right? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So yes, in the previous 2 weeks, I discussed some of the major theories of causality in the Islamic intellectual history, and I said one of them was occasionalist theories of causalities. Occasionalism, Asharite occasionalism, we usually mean this: God creates both cause and effect, and then God attaches them to each other, cause and effect, on a self-imposed habitual pattern. So these patterns are called sunnatullah or adatullah, and perhaps the natural laws, the consistencies in the world can be seen as divine habits, if you will, from this perspective. So and these habits are not necessary, as the theory implies. They can be broken. So in the case of miracles, we see that these habits are suspended. Or these laws, the natural laws, are suspended. So that's usually the explanation given in the occasionalist tradition. I also examined there is also another major tendency, which I tried to explain last week, more participatory accounts of causality, which start from the concept of existence, wujud, and then they understand everything else as relationship of wujud and mawjud. That's what everything else, the beings. If we can say this in English, the relationship between existence and essence, or being and beings. So, what are the advantages of these theories when it comes to the reconciliation between the tension between religion and modern science, especially the Islamic tradition that we have in mind here? So the main question when it comes to the relationship between religion and science appears to be this. Science has certain principles when it explains the world, and they are related to the question of causality. Science accepts that, or starts from the assumption that the world is a causally closed system, and it can be explained in terms of causality, in terms of cause and effect relationships. So when it rains, there's a scientific explanation for that, right? There's a scientific explanation for rain, and you can in fact find that you can actually in fact give a causal explanation. What happens after what, and what follows what event, and then we observe rain, right? So when I clap my hand, you hear my this clapping. So one can give a scientific explanation for this event. I'm clapping my hand, and you're hearing it. So there's sound waves involved in this activity, electromagnetic waves, and my computer translating this sounds into a different language, then also retranslating them into a sound again, and you can hear it on your side. So there's or plane, for example, right? How it flies. So things like that. Okay, there's a scientific explanation. Science starts from this assumption that things can be explained causally, and cause and effect relationships exist. In fact, this goes to the extent that the world, the cosmos as a whole, is a self-explanatory system. So why they do this? It's probably because of the necessity of denying gaps. So that also can be seen in certain religious interpretations. One can come up with the idea of God of the gaps, right? So if you cannot explain one thing, then you immediately see that as a miracle, but in fact, a scientific explanation can be provided. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. So that creates a certain tension between scientific ways of seeing things and religious discourse. So that's a problem. That may be a problem. So the question then seems to be boiling down the question of causality, how one understands the relationship between God and the cosmos. I think depending on this, you will either have a tension between scientific rigor and religious explanations of the same event, or not. How you understand this relationship is quite important. If you rely on the idea of God of the gaps, very often, this may seem quite scientific, especially in the scientific circles. So what can one do in a situation like this, and what can we learn from Islamic doctrines of causality, which are quite dominant in the Muslim world? Now that was the question that I was dealing with in the last chapter of my book. So Ash'ari occasionalism and participatory accounts, what can we learn from them in terms of this reconciliation of having both religious joy and also about scientific rigor in the world, as in our understanding of the world. So I looked at Ash'ari occasionalism, and Ash'ari occasionalism is a strong theory of causality. And if you think about it, so there may be certain, there may, depending on the interpretation, specific interpretation, one may encounter difficulties or advantages. For example, when we look at the Ash'ari occasionalism, this idea of God creates cause and effect and attaches them to each other. There's no necessary relationship, and these relationships can be broken. Hence, we have miracles. So this idea, in summary. So when we look at that, in fact, if we interpret it as such, it appears to preserve certain scientific principles there too. It definitely believes in that the world is the world is a consistent place, and the world is consistent. There are regularities. Things behave in law-like manners. When I drop the stone, it falls. Okay, so we are using Zoom, for example, right now, and we scheduled this a couple of weeks ago. We try. We depend on the consistency of this world process. We don't expect a surprise. Certainly atoms and electrons are behaving differently. Hence, we won't have this meeting, Zoom meeting. Okay, there's that type of consistency, and there's that type of trust in that consistency in the world. The world behaves in a regular and in a way which can anticipate, which we may trust. Hence, we can build our lives, and we can also study it, because without that type of regularity, you cannot even begin to study it, because the chaos cannot really be studied. Only something that behaves regularly according to certain principles can be studied and understood. That's the base of all sciences. That's also actually what we do in religious sciences too. So we want to come up with certain systems. We want to understand certain things in terms of their principles, and also we want to also guess and anticipate, or we want to estimate how what the next step is. That's why when you hop in a plane, you have that ontological trust when you fly. You don't expect that it's going to suddenly fall, right? That type of trust, that's the base of our lives. In Ash'ari occasionalism, when it uses the terms of sunnatullah, habits, it appears to provide that. Actually, it appears to tell us that the way God creates the world is regular. It is consistent. It is predictable. Hence, there's that advantage, when it comes to relationship of Ash'ari vocationalism and scientific, explanations, scientific explanation. There's that. How about the question of miracle then? The question of miracle, it obviously tells us that the world may sometimes behave differently. The sea may split, or these miracles. Just remember those miracles, right? The fire can turn into water, as in the case of Abraham, right? I mean, there seems to be this idea that, right, the world can behave differently sometimes. Cause and effect relationships can be suspended. When sometimes a fire may not burn the cotton. Okay, so that's however, what are we going to do about this then? When it comes to scientific explanations. For science, at least for the more orthodox views of science, this may be accept. For religious, so there are certain. This is a question that has been discussed extensively in the Ash'ari vocationalist tradition as well. Some of them are telling us that these miracles are quite marginal events. Sometimes they only for the prophets, as Bakallani says. So they are so marginal, they are so rare. Maybe they will happen only once in the lifetime of the universe. Hence, we shouldn't base our understanding of the world on these very rare events, because rare events, as we know, does not really give us the irrational analysis. They're just very rare exceptions. So you don't base your life on very rare exceptions, but intelligible relationships in the world. So when you want to simplify again, I mean, when you want to pass an exam, you just don't expect a miracle, but you sit down and study, and then you hope to pass that exam. That type of what we expect from the world. If we see the world as a place of these surprises, so we're gonna have a worldview based on the idea of surprise. But if we think that these surprises are very, very, very rare events, then we will base our lives on the idea of regularities, consistencies, the cause and effect relationships. So Ash'ari vocationalism can certainly do that if it marginalizes these miracles. And we see that, in fact, in people like Bakallani and Ghazali. So they think that miracles can only be seen. That type of miracles can only be seen when the as an affirmation of the prophetic message, the prophet's truthfulness. So and they accept that. So that's one way of seeing things for vocationalism. The another way, when it comes to these type of events, the miracles, is that vocationalism certainly accept the possibility of miracles, but it also certainly does not necessitate them. It can it can provide a metaphysical framework in which we can study the world as if there are no exceptions, as if there are no these even rare events, as if like you're a methodologically are believing that the world, the cause and effect relationships are never broken. So you start from that assumption and you start studying the world, and then that can in fact preserve the scientific rigor. It can be a truly rigorous study of the world. So that is, so Ash'ari vocationalism has this advantage, as I tried to explain in the book more extensively. How about the other part? So, by the way, when I say this, I also my own certain criticisms of the Ash'ari occasionalist tradition here and there, mostly on more theological questions, such as the question of evil, the question of human freedom, how can Ash'ari occasionalism truly preserve human will and freedom and agency. That's another question that I tried to discuss in the first lecture. So there are still certain problems, but when it comes to having a discourse, religious discourse, which can also include the scientific rigor in the study of the world, I think Ash'ari occasionalism seems to have that kind of possibility, provided that, again, that depends on the marginalization of these type of events, the surprises, also with certain more theological maneuvers. I think that can be done. So that's my conclusion when it comes to Ash'ari occasionalism. How about the other types of theories of causality? More participatory questions of theories of causality. And as I said, they start from the concept of existence and essence. So wujud and mawjud, or wujud and mahiyya. Mahiyya means whatness of something. I don't think I have to go back to explaining that. I tried to do that in the second lecture, but basically this is what they seem to be telling us. Take Ibn Sina, for example. Ibn Sina. So Ibn Sina is giving us a two-dimensional understanding of causality. On the one hand, he says there is metaphysical causality, and on the other hand, there is physical causality. And he understands physical causality in terms of motion, rest and motion. The things move, everything move in this world, right? So that's more like, that coming really close to what we understand from scientific causality. We study things in terms of, their causal relationships with each other. What causes what? And we try to come up with this causal picture of the world. So that's physical causality, he says. But then he also says that, and that this type of explanations, as I argued in my book, we can see in Islamic philosophical tradition a lot, and also Islamic spiritual Sufi tradition a lot. What they are telling us also, there is this metaphysical understanding of it, that is the presence of existence in all things. Everything else, this all motion, every mawjud is in the larger context of wujud, a larger context of existence. We are permeated by existence. We act, we do things, but everything happens by the bestowal of existence to us. We exist, first of all. In fact, actually, I think that the correct way of saying this is not that a horse exists, but like existence is horsey here, is a horse here, or existence is a baby there. Existence is a tree here. Things like that. I mean, so you see existence, and that existence is the relationship between, or presence of the divine in the world. So everything, the relationship between existing beings are taking place in the larger context of being. And understanding this is also to see both the relationships between mawjud, between beings, that's what we examine in the scientific literature, between beings, but also more philosophically and more spiritually, to see the being in which beings relate to each other, with which beings actually, exist. So simultaneously, you see the world as a place in which mawjud, in which beings, essences, relate to each other. Now you can study them causally in terms of matter and motion, like science do. But you may also take a step back and understand the permeation of wujud into all beings, into all existing beings, permeation of existence into all existing beings. Hence, this will give you a religious awe and joy when you look at a tree, anything that you see around, because they exist and existence is with them. But also you can see the tree there too, and you can study it in accordance with the natural laws and however you want to study it. So this is a different metaphysics than Ash'arite occasionalism. It obviously provides a lot of insights too, and I personally lean towards that understanding, and I personally prefer to see things from that perspective because it on the one hand this it on the one hand invites you to see where things meet, like physical and metaphysical, and it leaves the domain of physics, the domain of matter and motion. It doesn't impose any type of relationship in that domain. It requires us to see the permeation of being, existence there. Things are being given, are bestowed existence at all times. So that is the way that how you relate the world to the first, to the one, to God. So that's also how it is done in that tradition, or how it can be done according to my understanding. So this is this example that I just provided is a two-dimensional view of causality, physical and metaphysical, is that you can find in Ibn Sina, also in later Sufi tradition, that also, as I argued in my book, people like Ibn Arabi and his followers such as Dawud al-Qaisari, also Ishraqi tradition such as Mullah Sadra and Suhrawardi. Basically, in more philosophical and more spiritual tendencies, they seem to be going towards this direction, understanding the world in terms of the relationship between being and beings, or existence and essences. So that's that. So that obviously has a lot to say to the current, to the modern religion and science discussion, and I try to trace certain implications of essence, existence, metaphysics to the question of religion and science. So on the one hand, again, to summarize, we have Ash'arite occasionalism. On the one hand, we have more participatory accounts, more metaphysical, presenting existence as the metaphysical framework in which everything else happens. So that is, I think I should stop here. If there are any questions, that we can move on. If not, perhaps I can continue. But if there is any questions so far? Perhaps the topic may be challenging.
I don't see any questions. Just go ahead, Dr. Koca. We'll reserve some questions at the end if we have.
Okay, got it. So that is, that's basically actually what I, what I said, when the Ash'arite occasionalism and the participatory accounts. I also tried to give, how this discussion is taking place in the Western world. Not right now. In the last chapter again, again the discussion there in the Western academia, on the Western, in the field of religion and science, appears to boil down the question of causality as well, and they offer different, theories like special divine action, general divine action, and I try to explain that in the book, and we also see certain tendencies in terms of using more modern scientific theories, such as the quantum theory, such as chaos theory. These are all physical theories, like quantum theory and the chaos theory and emergence theories. So the tendency is that to use these theories, to use a quantum, quantum theory, evolution sometimes, the theory of chaos. These theories to think about the divine action in the world. So that's a discussion taking place. It's going on in the Western academia too. And how can we think about the divine action in the world in the light of these theories? My conclusion is a little bit different from what they are saying, but if I can summarize very briefly, this seems to be what's happening there. Think about a theory like chaos theory. The chaos theory is telling us that the very minute changes in a system can result in very big changes. So they, based on this idea, like non-linear systems, such as atmosphere, the very idea that a butterfly is flapping its wings, and it may perhaps cause a hurricane in China here, for example, right? A butterfly is flapping its wings here in California, since the atmosphere is a non-linear system, and a chaotic system, and it may immediately this effect can immediately be multiplied, and then perhaps after some time we can see that as a hurricane in the other part in the other part of the globe. So again, I'm simplifying it, but that's the idea. This very minute, very small changes can result in very big effects. So if that is the case, people like John Polkinghorst says, perhaps we can think about the divine action in terms of these very minor changes. Without really introducing anything new to the world, God still be acting on the world without really disturbing the physical system. So very, very minor changes, and then they can result in very big effects. So that's how he thinks about the divine action in the world. So there are also theories that start from the quantum. Again, the quantum theory can be interpreted that the whole idea of indeterminism, or emergence theories. The basic idea of emergence theories is that the higher systems cannot truly be reduced to the lower ones. And I mean, to simplify again, I mean, chemistry cannot truly be reduced to physics. Biology cannot truly be reduced to chemistry. Or consciousness cannot truly be reduced to some brain activities. There's always a jump in the nature. There's always this huge jumps. So physics. So this idea of reductionism is being rejected there. For example, I mean, your brain. You want to explain how you are conscious. According to a reductionist, everything can be reduced to relationships between the subatomic particles. Eventually, I mean, you can reduce this thought into biological activities in your body, in your brain, and then it can be reduced to chemical activities, and that can be reduced to physical, and a more, particular, and the activities and relationships between the particles. So this idea of reductionism is rejected here. The more religious readings of emergence theories are telling us that no, what we see is jumps. In fact, chemistry cannot be reduced to physics, biology cannot be reduced to chemistry, or consciousness or our thoughts, feelings cannot be reduced to brain activities. So these are, an emergence theories appear to sustain that idea, appear to support it in a way. So that's also these are also are being used. What I'm saying, however, is a little bit different. I believe these discussions are important, But in the book, that was one of my arguments in the book too. So I believe these discussions are important. Using more modern scientific theories in terms of understanding the relationship between God and the world. I believe thought experiments here are important. But what I'm seeing is that there are also certain disadvantages of this mode of thought. There are also certain problems, if you will, because these scientific theories are quite tentative. What they say today may change tomorrow. So, in fact, you're taking, a lot of theological discussions are taking place on scientific theories, which are, because of their nature, are changeable. Hence, there's a problem there. And there are certain other problems which I indicate in my book. But what I instead I'm trying to suggest is that look, the things are maybe relating to each other in this way or in that way, and so long as we are able to see the permeation of existence being into them, and so long as we are able to understand every being is relating to each other in the larger context of every individual being, every individual thing, entity, they relate to each other in this way or in that way. Hence, the specific aspects of a scientific theory, shouldn't bother us. It shouldn't be the primary concern here, the specificities of any scientific theory. But what we should do, in fact, if we want to have if we want to have both religious awe and joy together with scientific rigor, what we should do is to understand that every being, every entity in this world is relating to each other in this way, on a particle to another particle, a man to another man, a tree to another tree, or to other trees, or to the forest. So there are these relationships in this world. There's motion, there's matter. These are like the things that we see, we know. So it is not in the particularities of this relationship, but it is in the permeation of being, permeation of existence into these particular beings that we see the true relationship between God and the cosmos. Hence, we shouldn't make the specific aspects of these scientific theories to the major concern of the discussion between religion and science. But we should create metaphysical frameworks, and that's what will be my last, I guess, word here. We should be able to create metaphysical frameworks in which religion can stay as religion and science can stay as science, and they can relate to each other in a mutually enriching way. And the creation of those metaphysical frameworks are only possible by using categories which encapsulates religion and science. And that very universal, comprehensive, all-encompassing category is being, is existence, and maybe related to also consciousness, also the beauty, and things like this. It is this concept, especially the existence. When we start thinking about this question, I believe we may be able to create a larger metaphysical framework in which religion can preserve its distinct and beautiful identity, and science can preserve its distinct and beautiful identity, and they can also relate to each other. And that metaphysical framework can help us to create that type of language. But this is not something only religion can do, and this is not something only science can do. I think here we need to help of metaphysics here, philosophy maybe, but more specifically, traditional metaphysics can help us here. And that's what I try to do in my book too. That's why, there are a lot of metaphysical discussions there too, especially based on the concept of wujud and existence. So let me stop here.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Cook. I I have 3 questions if the audience will allow me to say all of them. First of all, if there is a war between science and religion,
Is there a war?
if there is a war between science and religion, or this is something phenomena it has some time and then will fade away?
I think I wouldn't say a war between religion and science, but obviously there is a tension between certain religious interpretations and certain scientific understandings. Especially this is observable perhaps in the Christian world more evidently. Think about this whole idea of, and the world is starting 6,000 years ago. According to a biblical narrative for some Christian denominations, that may be the case. But obviously, when we study the world more scientifically, we know that the world is much older, several billion years maybe. There's a tension here, and for some denominations, this is an either/or question. You will either believe in this or that. So that is that's the tension. That's, if you want to say a war, perhaps there's even a war there. More perhaps more fundamentalist expressions there, and then the a certain understanding of science. So when science takes reductionist forms, scientific, the philosophy of science takes reductionist forms, and when I say reduction, that also appears to contradict to most religious worldviews, such as if you believe that by starting from science, if you believe that we are here as an accident, right? There are accidents, a lot of accidents and natural laws, and here we are, like some interpretations of evolutionary theory appears to suggest that we are here as an accident, right? We are kind of ascended from matter, right? Ascending quality. The humans are ascending from the relationship of matter, atoms and molecules. So we are ascending. But religions start from a different point of view. They say you are actually descending from higher domains. You're, that's hence the idea of fall, right? The atoms are descending and leaving the heaven and then put on earth, right? So this idea of descent, on the one hand, appears to clash with the idea of ascent, that you will find in more, right, in certain interpretations of evolution. So how do you reconcile that? Appears there, explanations can be given, but to answer your question, yes, there is a problem here. There's a challenge here. There's a challenge here, and how you can go beyond that. That's the question. That's the question. And so that I think that a tension like that appears to be experienced by many religious traditions, including Islam. Young minds perhaps are being more challenged by that, and that's probably why we should think about religious discourses as well, in a way which can accept that challenge. Perhaps they can also be enriched by that challenge, and they can enlarge the horizons of their own self-perception. Here religion can benefit from this discussion. Science can benefit from this discussion as well. They appear to need each other. Science. Look, for example, the environmental problems, right? Environmental problems. Scientists are rightly telling us that there's a problem. There's a problem in this world, and we appear to destroy the natural resources and nature itself. That's environmental crises, right? So there's that. and perhaps religions can help here too, because they have enormous power to organize people, to create mass movements. Perhaps they can centralize this ideal of environmentalism and environmental stewardship, and hence they can contribute, and then perhaps we can solve this problem if we can learn to work together. And religious can obviously be a very positive power here. They can help us. So as you can see, science is giving, in this case, for example, science is giving you that the world is going towards a crisis, right?
Yes.
Environmental crisis, global warming. That's what we learn from science. But science is, because of its own limitations, or because of its own discourse, I guess, is not able to do as efficiently as religions do to create mass movements around it. Perhaps religions can be part of the discussion here, and they can educate their followers. They can centralize topics like this, accentuate them, underline them.
Yes. Yes.
In the mosques, for example, we can create movements, groups, foundations and things like that. And here you learn the facts from, you learned something new from the scientific community, and here you're organizing people as religious by using religious discourses and the very very convincing power of religious discourses. And then you're collaborating, and perhaps then you're solving the problem that our world is facing, because this type of global problems are not only threatening one community. If something happens to nature, that's gonna this effect will be global. It's not
Yes.
like scientists or only Christians, only Jews, or only Americans, Middle East. It's not like that. I mean, since that is a common problem, it requires common action. Hence, we have to learn to work together and to use our own strengths. What science do, perhaps religions cannot. But what religions do, perhaps scientific communities cannot. So, only thing that I can see here is, a mutual understanding and a collaboration. And perhaps my attempt, one of the reasons that I decided to write this book was that. So if we want a communication between the two communities, religious and scientific worldviews, right, we need to be able to come up with certain categories which are transcending both religious and scientific discourse, so that they can talk to each other, so that they can start understanding each other. So as if you're putting two discursive domain into dialogue
against each other.
To be able to do that, you need also some overarching concepts, some overarching language which can encapsulate both domains. And here we need help of philosophy and metaphysics. That was my conclusion there. Metaphysics and philosophy, and that's why also philosophy should be a very important part of this discussion. Not only purely religious and a purely scientific discourse, but they also need the help of philosophy in the creation of this larger framework of discourse. So what I see then, when since we face this type of global crises, perhaps we should sit down and start thinking about these things.
Sure. I have one of the audience asking about your book, where they can buy the books. As a matter of fact, I was planning to ask you to get some copies to sell it in the bookstore in the Islamic Center. Mm-hmm. But if you would like to,
see, here it is. I can show you the book. Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I have a copy here.
Yes.
This Islam, Causality, and Freedom.
Yes.
Islam, Causality, and Freedom, and it was published by Cambridge.
Okay.
University Press here. It's available in Amazon. I think the paperback, this was just published in 2020. The paperback will be available soon, and it's going to be cheaper. I think it's right now is being sold around $70 or something. Good. Less. but the paperback will be more affordable, I guess, and that's coming soon. So that's the book.
So if we need to get some of these, we'll have to just go to Amazon.com and get it from there, or you have some publisher that you want us to communicate with.
Cambridge, that's the publisher.
Okay.
But I think on Cambridge website, it's gonna be more expensive, I guess. I think Amazon is more affordable.
Okay. All right. Okay. I have another. If I don't have, let me check if I have other questions here. I don't. I have a statement, and just I want your input or your answer to this. I just was reading yesterday to prepare for your lecture, and it drew my attention this statement. Yes. The statement said religion will not regain all the power until it can face change in the same spirit as does science. Yes or no about this statement, Dr. Cook?
I think I can say conditionally yes. I think the one who's making this statement is, I have certain disagreements because scientific and religious discourses or how they function are quite different. So science is primarily focusing on the matter and study of the matter, right? And then it checks its conclusions and it corrects them. So there is this tentativeness in science, and there is also this progress in science that we know more about the world than we know 100 years ago or 10 years ago even, right? 1 year ago, right? So there's this progress that we see. So that's how science functions. Religions are, I think there's room for change in religion, and there must be change in religion. But there are certain aspects of religious thought, they appear to be quite transhistorical. And they, especially when it comes to issues like the idea of God on morality, certain moral ideas and certain, aspects of human condition, they appear to resist to change. The relationship. For example, the question that I just mentioned, right? The question of existence. Why do we exist? Why are we here? The questions like this that you truly, they truly, challenge human mind, and we all ask these questions.
Yes.
What is the explanation of this very interesting thing that we are experiencing here, right?
Yes.
We ask this type of questions, and that's why when you read a good book written 25,000 years ago, someone like Plato, for example, right? I mean, or someone like Aristotle, right? Maybe Aristotle's physics is outdated now, but Aristotle's metaphysics, you can still go read and be inspired by it. You can still go read Plato's dialogues and be inspired by it. If you're from another tradition, you can go read Tao Te Ching, right? From a Taoist tradition, it will still inspire you. There's something resisting to change, and there's something right ever new, as if there's that timeless quality. And as Shakespeare said, there's nothing more timely than the timeless, right? So a Muslim can experience the same thing when he reads the Quran, or when he encounters with a prophetic tradition, right? For hadith, which speaks to him as if it is spoken today, right now. As if you're being washed by the sacred text, and you are being addressed by it. When you read the Surah Al-Fatiha, right, the opening chapter, it is new. It is still here, right? So there's that type of relationship. But that's not to say that certain aspects of religion shouldn't change. I believe there's a lot of room for change in religion too, especially when it comes to legal issues, more legal issues. The relationship, or legal issues, especially when they are inspired by specific cultures of that geography. So relationship in terms of the gender, the gender relationships. What
Yes.
we need to think about that again and change things.
Yeah.
The relationship between so certain other issues, right? The relation when it comes to economy. If there are certain rulings which were issued 500 years ago, we should be able to go back to that and
And
say,
visit that, yeah, and visit that one more time, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And when it comes to like the punishments or things like that, I believe the issue of apostasy, for example, right? I mean, things like that. I believe there's a lot of things that we need to sit down and discuss and perhaps go beyond this, the old books. So my answer again is conditional. Certain aspects of religion, they appear to be transhistorical. They appear to be perennial because they deal with the perennial nature of human condition. But certain aspects, they appear to be more historical, more contextual, more cultural, especially legal issues, apostasy, gender relationships. I think issues like this should be readdressed because religions are complex structures. I think we cannot just say all change, all should go, or all should stay, no change at all. We shouldn't touch anything, all is sacred. I think that type of simplistic understandings will not really help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dr. Koca, it's very challenging subject, specifically when you talk about science and religion. And I'm glad that we have you in the center and as a speaker. We sometimes have very challenging speaker like you, Dr. Zaman, that was watching us, Dr. Gasser. I think we are fortunate with our speakers. I thank you so much for your time. We value your time and your dedication to our community. And I'm looking forward, inshallah, to get in touch with you again to address the same topic, religion and science again. Thank you so much, Dr. Koca. I appreciate your help.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just wanted to tell our audience that starting next week, Sunday program will be shifted to the other days of the week, but we're still going to recruit the topics and the author and the speaker, and we're going to address the same topics, but it will not going to be on Sunday, inshallah. This is according to the religious committee decision, and we're going to work on that in the next few days, inshallah. Thanks so much all, and we'll see you in the next event. May God bless you, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.